I want to turn to something else that we've been hearing a lot about that's dead wrong, and you deserve to know a little more of the truth, and that is that the idea that, well, the report's out, let's move on, that's how Senator McConnell put it at one point, is actually being rebutted not by politicians, but by you, by citizens. Take a look at this. There are book versions of the Mueller report that right now are at #1 and other spots from 3 to 5 on the bestseller list. You see it right here. This is from today. Meanwhile, other people around the country are learning about this report from articles and summaries which obviously quote a lot of what Mueller found. Take a look at these headlines from the New York Times, or take a look at another metric. 11 million people watching coverage of Attorney General Barr's press conference when he released the report. I covered DOJ, and I can tell you, we don't usually take those pressers live about anything, let alone to get numbers like that. The point here really echoes something that Lawrence just said. I didn't know he was going to say it, but that he just said, which is this is a process. You can't predict what people will think about something they haven't read yet, and then what they do with that information. Politics is obviously about you guys, and what are you going to do with what you learn about the Mueller report? For all of this, I want to bring in someone who knows the Democratic side of this well and has worked directly with Speaker Pelosi in leadership. That's former New York Congressman Joe Crowley. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you, Ari. Good to be with you.
I want to read to you what is on the screen right now, without going too meta, but it's all the news that's happening tonight that we haven't even fully gotten to after I just spoke with Lawrence and the senator. Donald Trump attacks his own lawyer, McGahn. Democrats subpoena McGahn. Trump's approval dropping to Charlottesville levels. Dems now talking impeachment, a serious matter. Kushner downplaying Russian interference, a quote I'll play later in the show. That's why the headline on the screen is so smushed, because all of that's happening right now. And then you add the point I wanted to begin with you on, which is, what is your view of the import or the fact that so many Americans are reading the Mueller report themselves?
Well, I think it's beyond fascinating that they're still interested in this issue. We've been told that they want to move on. And in fact, they are very interested in terms of what the facts are and what is really embedded in this report.
And so do you think that ultimately Speaker Pelosi, who you work so closely with, will be factoring that in? Meaning, are we watching a Pelosi who's made up her mind and is defending a no impeachment position? Or are we watching a Pelosi who is always practical and is landed on that position but is going to see what else happens?
I think what Nancy's about is seeking the truth. And I think she's directing her colleagues, in this case, Jerry Nadler and others, to do their job. And that is to seek the truth, to issue those subpoenas, to bring the relevant parties in before the House and ask those questions that need to be asked, and to fully vet this report and fully get to the bottom of this.
So it's with love that I note that you're not answering the question, and you're not even in Congress anymore. So you can answer the question. Is the Speaker, who I know you respect a lot, is she possibly going to move towards impeachment in your view, or is this closed in her mind?
I think, as she said, it will lead where it will lead. And I think if it pans out that there are impeachable offenses, which I personally believe there are, that it may very well lead towards that. But if this is a process, I think even Lawrence knows it won't happen just tomorrow. There will have to be hearings and evidence that will be brought to the Congress as well in a much a very long time. You know, this won't happen overnight. It's going to take quite some time. And by the way, what I do know Nancy Pelosi believes in, I think Lawrence knows this as well, she believes in elections, that they have consequences, and that the best way to beat Donald Trump is to beat him in the next election as well. The American people have to own responsibility for this president as well.
And the Speaker, like all speakers, sees her #1 job as maintaining the majority, re-electing the majority, increasing the majority. And Joe, that brings us to the calendar. Even if you started impeachment next week, you wouldn't get to a vote of the full House on impeachment until sometime in the fall, sending that to the Senate. And at that point, you're really crowding into the presidential campaign. How much is the presidential campaign timing a factor for the Speaker in this?
Well, I don't want to read her mind, but I do think that she believes that this is divisive. And Lawrence, I think we'll remember back during the 06 when Nancy and Democrats took back the House. There was a great outcry to impeach then President Bush over the Iraq War. And Nancy, to her credit, I think, putting politics aside, said that she wouldn't put the American people through that. It was so divisive. And eventually, we did win the presidency in the next election cycle. So I do think that there's no question that the calendar itself is going to be very congested. If we actually started impeachment proceedings in the House, it would take a very long period of time. And then it would go to the Senate. And therein lies the crux, because we know there aren't the votes in the Senate today to actually impeach the president.
Yeah, and yet I think the constitutional obligation of your former colleagues is to figure out what they want to do regardless of that. I mean, they were the ones giving these lectures about Senate Republicans should stand up to Donald Trump on Charlottesville or on Russia or on sanctions. And that the answer to that was not, oh, it's not good for us politically, or politically it won't work, or even on the vetoes, oh, Trump will veto it anyway. There are things, and this would seem to be one where, and I'm not saying how to come down, but there are things where the way you want to come down ought to be the oath of office and not the predictions of politics, it would seem. Congressman Joe Crowley.
I think we all know her very well. She believes in the Constitution. She believes in the process, and she's seeking the truth. And I think in the end, that's what will set us all free, as we say.
The truth will set us free. Did
Maybe
you know
not
that,
Donald
Lawrence?
Trump.
That's what
And maybe we're in the right business. Congressman Joe Crowley, always appreciate you stopping by. Lawrence O'Donnell, part of 3 different discussions tonight here in the top of our show. And hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.